So where exactly is the place where parental rights stops? The rights of a parent to raise their children. Where's that stop? And the state's rights to step in to the family start. Well, it seems to me like that question is being answered for us right now, currently out in the culture. And that answer is when issues of sexuality and gender are in play. This is what we're going to look at today here on To the Point. I'm Jon Noyes. Remember, ask your questions or add comments in the comment section below or to the side or whatever it is on your uh, streaming platform. At the end of 10 minutes or so, today might be a little bit longer, I'll take a look at those and hopefully address them. So today we're going to be talking about the article that's linked there from the New York Times. It's one of America's, we all know it's one of America's most influential news sources. The article's in our question, our purview today, it's written by Katie Baker, entitled "When Students Change Gender Identity and Parents Don't Know." The opening sentence to the article speaks volume and really sets the stage for our conversation today. It says Jessica Bradshaw. This is the woman that one of the women that's pulled out of a study or a survey that's done by the author of this article. It says, and I quote, "Jessica Bradshaw found out that her 15-year-old identified as transgender at school after she glimpsed a homework assignment with an unfamiliar name scrawled at the top." You see, Miss Bradshaw, she went on to talk about her daughter or talk with her daughter about the issue and found that that she had been identifying as a male for more than 6 months at school, raising the question, why wasn't I told? Miss Bradshaw, that question came to Miss Bradshaw's mind. Doesn't the school have a responsibility to notify the parents? Well, the answer to both of those, or that question right there, is no. You do not have a right to know. The article says the Bradshaws, and I quote this is a quote, "The Bradshaws have been startled to find themselves at odds with the school over their right to know about and weigh in on such a major development in their child's life." Continuing on in the article, a dispute a dispute that illustrates how school districts, which have long been the battleground in cultural conflicts over gender and sexuality, are now facing wrenching new tensions over how to accommodate transgender children. You see, the article goes on to say that Mrs. Bradshaw said she resented the fact that the school had made her feel like a bad parent for wondering whether educators had put her teenager, a minor, by the way, a minor, in a path the school wasn't qualified to oversee. You see Mrs. Bradshaw struggling with that issue that we're kind of addressing today. Where do parental rights stop, and where does the government, in this case, the government as represented by the school, start? One thing to point out here is that the Bradshaw family are supportive, by the way. They're supportive of their daughter, not only presenting as a male, but they're supportive of affording her top surgery, removing of her breasts, and then taking hormones to help her look more like a male. This is somebody who is on the ideological left, and they're still concerned. In fact, actually, when you read the article, and I highly recommend that you click on that link and you read the article, because it goes on to talk about lawsuits that are being brought by all different types of parents across the ideological spectrum, and in fact, a group of parents is being represented by a lawyer who is themselves trans and very pro LGBTQ plus agenda. And I mention this because these are people willing to allow their daughter to become a transgender male, yet they still have concerns over the school's decision to intentionally keep them in the dark about their daughter's school life. Mrs. Bradshaw said, and I quote, this is another quote from the article, "I felt like a parent, it felt like a parenting stab in the back from the school system. It should have been a decision we made as a family." And it is a stab in the back. It's 100% subversive of your parental rights and authority. But this is becoming the norm, and that's why we're talking about it today here on To the Point. This issue's been turbocharged in recent weeks, and that's why I've spent so many of these To the Points. I think this is maybe my second or third on the transgender issue I'm talking about, because it's important. That's why you're tuning in. That's why we should be sharing these videos and talking about these things out in the culture, because it's important. We live in a day and an age when the government wants you to drop your children off at one of their government indoctrination centers, the schools, and leave their education up to them as they see fit, asking no questions. In fact, they're going to go as far as to say that when you ask questions, you're immoral. You see, and then that education, it's going to include advising your sons or your daughters to become daughters and sons. And you see what I said there? It's going to include having your sons become daughters and your daughters become sons. And this will be done without your consent as the parents. And maybe 10 years ago when I said this, like when we were saying this or when this was said, you would have said, no way. That's not going to happen. But right here it is living proof in this article in one of the most read news publications in the world, the New York Times. But there's even more for us here. You know, the article, and I quote, it says this: the public school that Mrs. Bradshaw's son, and then I want to pause here for a second, because keep in mind, when I say son, it's actually Mrs. Bradshaw's daughter. Okay, it's her daughter. It's not her son. So when you read son, it's really hard when we read these things, because you lose sight of actually what's being said here. They're recognizing their daughter as their son. So Mrs. Bradshaw's son, so we got to keep that in mind, attends one of the school that she attends is one of the many throughout the country that allow students to socially transition. This is from the article: change their name, pronouns, or gender expression without parental consent. Districts have said they want parents to be involved, but must follow federal and in some cases state guidance meant to protect the student from discrimination and violation of their privacy. And notice that the protection there is focused. They're protecting them from their parents. The violations of their privacy or discrimination is coming at the hands of their parents, supposedly. So why is a government school teaching our children about gender ideologies in the first place? This is something we've talked about in the context of the sex ed curriculum before here on To the Point. When did that become acceptable? You see, if this issue, if it's upsetting to us, or especially if this issue surprises you, you haven't been paying attention. We need to wake up. You know, we have incrementally, and this is something, again, that I've said before, we have incrementally handed parental responsibility over to the government, and totalitarianism is creeping in at the door. And I'm not throwing that out there as a boogeyman. I've talked about this, and it's worth mentioning again. You know, a totalitarian government requires subservience to the state, to Caesar. And total ideological surrender is the only thing that's acceptable, and anything but that will be punished. And this is what we're seeing here. When I say indoctrination is the right word. And in these public schools, they're indoctrination centers. You know, the purpose of public education's changed over the last 200 years. You know, and fundamentally, you know, the public school system was meant to come alongside you and me as parents, and to teach young citizens to become better citizens, productive citizens, to think critically, to solve problems, to communicate effectively with one another, to express creativity. And ultimately, the main goal is to pursue truth. And it was all supposed to be done with the ultimate purpose of helping to create well-rounded citizens who can participate in the culture and in building the culture, making the culture, and participate in the democracy. And then this is not what's happening here. Instead, we have public schools that have in large part become indoctrination centers, teaching students what to think, not how to think. And in the process, they're abandoning truth for an ideology. And this is not the purpose of the public school system. This is not their place. And it's not the role of the teacher to be the moral bodyguard for our students, for our children. And this point becomes really clear as we turn back to the New York Times article. And I want to quote this. It says this: schools have pointed to research and show policies benefit all students. Well, I'd ask who are all students, because it doesn't benefit your student or mine if we toe a different line. They don't benefit our student. If my daughters want to go to a bathroom where they feel more comfortable knowing that it's not a boy that's going to meet them in the bathroom, but all girls, that view is not welcome. So it doesn't benefit all students. Going back to the article, which is why some of the education experts advise schools to use students' preferred names and pronouns. Educators have also said that they feel bound by their own morality. This is crazy. Like, listen to this. Educators say that they feel bound by their own morality to affirm students' gender identities, especially in cases where students don't feel safe coming out at home. Two main issues. Well, there's three issues. One I already mentioned, right? One I already mentioned, that not all students benefit from these things. Only the students that toe the ideological line benefit. But there's two other issues that we should pop out of that, what I just said. Don't be fooled by the reference to research. This is something that should pop out in our minds when we see this. Is they're going to refer to research out there or experts that have been consulted. Most times by research, what they mean is that they mean individual studies of small sampling sizes done by the same indoctrination centers that support and even serve as the genesis of the very ideas that the studies seek to prove. These are our higher educational institutions. This is not research. This is extreme and harmful social experimentation, and they're doing it on our kids under the guise of education. But notice the second issue here in that statement I just read. Notice that there's moral language. Educators have said they feel bound by their own morality. Since when does a teacher's morality or their moral system trump the morality of a student's parents when dealing with that student? One educator in the article, if you continue to read it, is quoted as saying, "My job," this is a quote, "my job, which is a public service, is to protect kids." And then the article says, and then this teacher describes herself as a non-binary and has helped students socially transition at school without their parents' knowledge. She goes on to say, this teacher goes on to say, sometimes they need protection from their own parents. This is not the public school's responsibility and it's not what they should be teaching our kids. They shouldn't be teaching our kids about sexuality in this way. They shouldn't be protecting our students in this way. This is not the job of the public school. It's not the job of any teacher. And then notice this, and this is why it's of major concern, that quote that I read, when they couch these things in a moral foil, they make it hard to speak against. And this is intentional. They're saying that this is the right way and the only way. And if you disagree with it, then fundamentally you're immoral. But they take it a step further. They're saying when their moral system butts up against the moral system of a parent, well, sometimes you need to push the parent out of the equation is what they're saying. And they're saying it openly in the New York Times. I'm getting excited here because I think we should be getting excited about these topics. They should be affecting us, and we should be speaking into them and holding our own. And because what's it mean for a student or its teacher rather? What's it mean for a teacher to protect a student from the student's own parents? Well, from the context of this article and then the context here, the only thing that I can derive from that statement in this case, the threat, the protection is, and the threat is coming, the threat to the child's well-being is that the parents may not agree or may not affirm the radical sexual or gender ideology of what their kids want to believe or what the administration or the teachers want to believe. So the teachers now need to protect your children from you when you disagree with them on this issue. This is moral insanity. There's no other way to say it. I'm not being verbose. I'm not exaggerating. The language used in this article, it shows that we are in real trouble. And I'm going to say something, and it's something hard, and I understand that, and it's something I've alluded to before, onto the point, and something I've alluded to already today, right here. If you don't realize that this is happening, you need to wake up. We as Christians are far too often slow to realize these things. We've handed the education of our kids over to the state, and now we're seeing the results. Even liberal parents are recognizing this, as evidenced by the article. Our public school system has become a way for the government to indoctrinate and experiment on your children, and this is not the job of the public education system. And now there's a very deliberate attempt to not only keep information from parents about their own children, but here's a clear attempt to cause division within the family unit. And they're using moral language to do it. And the results, well, the result is in shame, and any dissenting opinion is to be punched down on. I have a perfect example of this. I was just at the orthodontist with my second daughter. I've got 4 daughters. I was with Phoebe. No, I'm sorry. I was with Joelle. So it's my third daughter. I was with Joelle at the orthodontist office, and she's sitting in the orthodontist chair, and on the TV, they had like a TV there with a cartoon, no sound or anything. So she's watching it, she's reading the subtitles, and it's a new Disney movie. We don't have Disney Plus anymore. We got rid of it, so my kids haven't seen it. It's an animated movie. And when we got in the car, Joelle says to me, or she says, that movie looked really interesting. I was like, oh yeah, I wasn't really watching any of it. And she said, yeah, but it made me feel a little weird. I said, oh, why? And she said, because at one point, one of the characters asked a boy character, a boy character, if he had any romantic interests at that moment in his life. And the boy character said yes. And he went on to say a boy's name. So it was an openly gay character in the Disney thing. And what made her feel awkward, this is interesting. I said, why'd that make you feel kind of awkward? It wasn't what you might think. It made her feel awkward because this is what she said. I'm not saying this. This is what my daughter said. Not because she was confronted with something she disagreed with. She felt awkward because she felt like she couldn't say anything. In her words, I didn't want to ask you any questions because we were in public. That's what my own daughter said to me. And this isn't something I'm teaching. I'm not teaching. And I said to her, I said, you can ask me any question, anytime, anywhere. But notice and she goes to a small Christian private school, but she's catching the cultural conversation. She's catching the things that are being pushed down through the culture. Don't talk about that. That's not to be talked about. So it can be thrust upon you, but if you ask questions, then there's shame involved, and it's inherent in the conversation. It's happening, and it's not right. And I don't say it's not right in a subjective form. I'm saying it's not right in an objective sense. It's not just hurting me, but I think it's bad for humanity in general. For more on that, I think you can go back to To the Point and some recent blogs that I've written in the last couple months about these things. But ultimately, guys, and I've gone way over. I knew I was going to go over today. We need to wake up. This system that's been set up is not good enough, and we don't allow the crowd to muffle us. We need to speak into it and go out into the culture and fight for what's right. And when we see these things in our own community, we need to address them directly. And lastly, I think that we really need to exercise, and I'm firm on this now. And the more I look at these issues within the public school, is that we need to exercise our right to pull our children out of the public school system. The only thing that's gonna wake, I think, the government up to we're serious on this is if we pull our children out. Because for every child that's in school, they get a certain amount every day of money. The school does. So as schools decline in attendance, funding for schools declines as well. And so I recommend that we do whatever we can do to take our children out of the public school system. I know this is easier said than done, but the way I see it, it's the only way things are going to change. I had a conversation the other day with a friend, of mine, he just took his kids out of a private school, Christian private school, and put them back into the public schools. And we've talked about this before, and he says, well, this isn't what my kids are getting taught. They're not, and they're older. They're in high school. They're not, this isn't what they're pushing on my kids, or my kids aren't affecting, but they're really strong Christian kids. They're good kids. And, but my response is that the entire educational industrial complex is shifted towards this ideology. The government is completely and utterly dismissive of the parent. And this should really concern us to the point where we shouldn't be involved, because it's only a matter of time. If it's not being taught to your student directly, it's only a matter of time until it is. And it's not so much even just about the teaching. If they want to teach my kids about this stuff, well, fine. But they should notify you if your son is dressing as a girl. So they're actively seeking to hide things. They're being deceptive. And notice this is intentional, guys. This is not this is intentional. It's part of the plan, that they're pulling children away from the family unit, and that's how they take things over, and that's where totalitarianism comes in, and all this stuff. So with that, guys, that's my 2 cents on this topic for right now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn down to the turn down to the comments here, and it's good to see you guys here, and so many people tuned in today. Notice the links from Harmony. Make sure you click on those, guys, and read the article. I didn't really link to anything else today. Let's see what this here we go. Parents, it's interesting that you have the was that Goopoo tube. It's interesting that you have the hammer and sickle, right? That's the former USSR symbol, and the hammer and sickle with the line through it, because I feel like with these types of things, I feel like that's where we are. I feel like we're being brought into a communist regime. It's interesting. I feel like we're going there, and I'm not like quick to say this stuff, guys. I'm not your typical like sound the alarm guy. That's just not me. But I see it, and it's getting more and more as more and more news stories are being published like this. What happens is this is all getting normalized. So now we're going to stop asking the questions. It's insane. It's insane. All right. So parents have absolute right over their children within the Bill of Rights. Yes. The state has none until the parent puts their child at danger of loss of life or limb. Ironically. But notice there's not specific in the Bill of Rights. There's not specific. Danger is being. We started an abortion debate too. Life of the mother. Well, what do you mean health or health of the mother? What do you mean health of the mother? Is it mental health, physical health, spiritual health? And here we see the same thing. What we're seeing is that abuse is being redefined, which is so harmful because it muddies the waters. It muddies the waters, and I believe that it's only a matter of time until the views that I'm expressing here, they're already throttled on Facebook and all social media stuff. When you look at my views and stuff, it's crazy. You can see that they throttle things. They may even take this video down. They, as in the people who run Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, whatever platform this goes to. So they're seeking to muffle it, but now the government is involved in this too. They're muffling us, and what they're doing is they're guising in a moral language, and they're saying, well, your child is in danger. Well, what do you mean by danger? Well, you're not letting them be who they want to be. My kid's 5 years old. My kid doesn't know what she wants to be. My 12-year-old doesn't know the person that she wants to be, and we're guiding her towards that. But we put rails up. And this is what a parent does. This is the parent's job. We put rails. There are certain things on and off the table. And that might look differently for every other parent. Do you guys remember it used to be what matters in our own, like what happens in our own bedroom that doesn't affect you? What do you care? Well, those days are gone. I mean, gone. Let us be, let you be. Don't force your views on me. The tables have been completely flipped, and now these views are not only being forced, but they're being forced on our children. And how can we expect then this is the issue. Then this is one of my main arguments. Thanks for this comment here. This is one of my issues, and one of the reasons why I think that we need to be pulling our kids from the public school system, is because how can we expect a 10-year-old to withstand the onslaught from teachers in the school setting? And then you add to it peer pressure and these things. And how can we expect them to last up to that? And what we do is we hand our kids over to these teachers and these administrators, and we hand them over for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. How do we expect them to withhold? It's not our kids' fault that they come home confused. It's not our kids' fault. It's ours. We're their parent. It's ours. And we have a say, and we have control, and we need to be responsible for our children and take that role as a parent seriously. And for me in my house, it's cost us a lot. We've switched jobs to make these things happen. My wife works, in order so we can afford, so we don't have to do public school. This year we homeschooled for the first time ever, my oldest. We make personal sacrifices, and I know that this is hard to say, and it's easy to say and hard to do. But with these issues, the time is now. The time was 10 years ago. Now it's like, I don't even know if the system is redeemable here, but it definitely, like, the only way I've gone to the PTA meetings, I've gone to the school board meetings in my local district. I've gone and I've spoken at the podium to these administrators, to these elected officials, and I've prepared short little speeches, and I've made my case in I think a compelling way, and it does nothing. It does nothing. And we just take one step. We push one. And I'm in a fairly conservative pocket of Southern California, and I'm in the Conejo Valley. I guess I'm just north of the Conejo now, but I'm in Ventura County, which is a little bit more conservative, which isn't saying a ton. But these things aren't working. We need to pull our kids, because you hit them where it hurts, and that's with the money. So anyways, that's enough of that. Let's see here. Deborah, thanks for tuning in. Deborah, yes, parents have every right to know. We created, birthed, adopted them. It's certainly a right to know. What's really interesting, and this is a great thing, Deborah. I'm glad that you said this. This sentiment is agreed upon across ideological lines, and that's like one of the things that came from this article that I actually really appreciated, is you had dissenting opinions coming from all over the map. The article definitely was not pushing that, but it was pushing a narrative for sure. And actually in another publication, I want to say Salon, or I forget, another publication last week, I read a really long article that was arguing straight up for the fact that parents there's two options. Like the only moral option is to go against parents. That's what this article, in a major publication, I think it was Salon, I can't remember, one of the ones I get. It's a traditionally ideologically left-leaning publication. But across the board, people are speaking out about this. Across the board, they're saying, wait, no, time out. Even this family, the Bradshaw family, from the New York Times article, they agree ideologically with they're allowing their daughter to do whatever she can to be presented as a son. They bought into the ideology, but they just want to be told, and this is not happening, and we need to be aware of it. Let's see here. Bottom line, parents need to organize and keep tabs on the schools. Absolutely, Justice. Absolutely. Even at my kids' school, my oldest is homeschooled. The other three go to a classical school, a Christian classical school here right by my house. Even there, I make a point of a couple times a year going and sitting in on the class. I take time off and I sit on the class, because I just want to make sure that I take it seriously. And how much more public school? I wonder, do they even, I don't know, maybe some of you guys have public school students. Do they even would they let you go sit in on your son or daughter's class? If not, there's a serious problem. there's a serious problem if they do not let you go sit in on your son and daughter's classes with them. That would be a major red flag to me. I have no idea. I don't know if they do or if they don't, but I could see them not allowing it. Safety concerns, right? They're going to wrap it in a moral foil. They're going to say for the betterment of, for the safety of the other students, for the safety of the classroom, so you don't disturb the classroom. You can't do this because you can't go and sit in on your kid's class and keep your mouth shut and observe. Like that would cause me major concerns. If they didn't allow that, my kid wouldn't be there. Let's see here. Edward, thanks for tuning in, Edward. The new control of government-supported schools. We take our money and they get control. That's right. They get both, right? They get our kids and our money. And then we're left holding the bag, right? When culture's in the dumps, and then we wonder why. This, by the way, has been the way of. This is how we as Christians in this country. This has been our story for a really long time. If we think about it, if we survey, and shame on us, because what happens? Okay, historically speaking, Christians, we found an educational institution, Harvard. Right, I think Harvard's the oldest. The Christians found Harvard to be a school to train up missionaries, right? And then what happens over the course of 100 years? We let in creeping more liberal ideologies, and then we end up losing the institution. So then we start another one, and then we build it up, and we put our resources and our time into it to pursue the glory of God, and then we give it up because it becomes liberal. And this has been the story when you look at the educational system in the country all along. And this is nothing new. For the last 100 years, we've seen incremental changes in the public school system, right? So it shouldn't surprise us. But when are we going to become wise to it, and when are we going to seek to fix it? Like, that's what we need to do. And it's hard. Like, it takes hard things. But we either do the hard things now, or the hard things will be forced upon us, and then it won't be a matter of choice. So I think that we do the hard things now, and then in the hopes of redeeming culture, and instead of having hard things be forced upon us. So let's see here. Let's see what we got. I'm going to scroll through here. Yeah, I think you're right here. Down with totalitarianism. Yeah, too many fellow followers of Christ don't get it or are unwilling to act. I agree with you. Rod Dreyer's "Live Not by Lies." I think it came out 3 years ago now. Rod Dreyer, "Live Not by Lies," a fantastic book. And he's pointing the whole time to this by what he's doing is he's interviewing Christians. He's interviewing Christians who grew up and lived in the East. So they lived in when Germany became totalitarian, all these totalitarian states. And there's some really great observations to pull out of that book. I highly recommend you go buy it and you read it. It's a great book. Rod Dreyer, "Live Not by Lies." Another one is Carl Trueman's "Rise and Fall of the Modern Self." Rise and Fall of the Modern Self. Now, that one's a little bit more difficult. It's a hard book, straight up. But it's prophetic. Both of them. That one traces things through and kind of points you to the history, to the future. The Rod Dreyer book, that one's prophetic. I think it's going to be a really important book when we look back on history. So those two, I think. Let's see here. Justice. Could churches help parents in the congregations to get organized at the public schools? Maybe have some conferences with some training. Absolutely. But here's the deal. I think that if we wait for pastors, I'm a pastor. Okay. I work at STR as a speaker. That's my full-time job. I'm full-time with Stand to Reason. But I pastor a small little church here too. I am fully committed to the local church. I think the local church, I know because of scripture, the local church is God's means to redeeming this world. The local church is powerful. But if we rely on pastors to do this, like when we say the church, the oftentimes when we say, well, maybe the church could help, what we mean is the pastors in the church should start this thing. And what I would challenge you to do is, you're aware, Justice, you're on here, you make great comments. Go to your friends at church and say, hey, I think this is a real issue. Would you be interested in learning more about it? Tuesday night, my house. Boom. Don't even go through your pastors. The pastors are busy, man. They've got enough going on with pastoral care and preaching and teaching and all of that stuff, the pastoral ministry stuff. What we need to do is we just need to take the reins and do it. Don't wait for your pastor to give you permission, is what I'm saying. We just do it. It's like when people say, hey, I'm going to pray about like I'm going to pray about reading my Bible. This is just an obvious example. Nobody ever says this to me. I'm going to pray about reading my, well, why are you going to pray about it? You already know it's good. You just do it. You just do, if it's something that's already good. I mean, I'm not saying that we skip on prayer. This thing here, you'd want to bathe it in prayer for sure, but you just do it. Then go and do it. Like, that's what we need to do. We need to get that can-do mentality, because the opposing side's not waiting on things. They're doing. And so now we need to do the same thing. Be strong and organized. But we lead this. We lead the charge. Let's see here. Thanks for these comments, guys. This is great. Hey, Rick, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. The idea of the idea that thinking or feeling changes reality is a belief in magic, which makes it religious. Anti-religion becomes religion. This is a really interesting statement, Rick. I don't know where you're coming from just by reading it, but I know what you mean. Absolutely. The idea that thinking or feeling changes reality. So reality is the way that the world really is. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but reality, the world around me, doesn't bend and contort according to my personal preferences. It would be fantastic for me if it did. Maybe not for you, but it would for me, right? But that's not the way it is, because reality is that thing that you bump into when you're not living according to it. And sometimes those bumps hurt. And in here, we are bumping into reality. And I think that this ideological stream is bumping hard into reality, and now's the time to be pointing these things out. Now is the time to be calling people to the table of reality and say, I'm sorry. But it's not all about your feelings. It's not. And I speak, my main topic on for the last 3 or 4 years now, one of my main topics has been suicide. That's why a lot of the places, almost every place that brings me in to speak, I'll speak on other things, but almost every time they want me to speak on suicide in addition, because it's such a weighty and important topic. And when I read the suicide stuff that's coming out of these people, the people that are these students who are wrestling with their sexual identity, when they're wrestling with these things, the suicide rates within the trans community is through the roof. It's through the roof. And within the community, the community is going to say it's because they need to be more of approving. They need to be given space to live out their true identity. But then when you actually look into the literature of it, that's not at all what's happening. It's the exact opposite. They need truth and love. So they need to be given truth in a very loving way. We need to let them know. When I start my talk every time now, I step in front of the podium or wherever I am, and I say, hey guys, I just want to let you, this is what I say. I say, guys, I just want to let you know I love you. I don't know where you are in your journey here. I don't know if you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian. I don't know if you're bisexual, asexual, transsexual. I don't know where you are, but I know I love you. And the reason why I love you is because you're made in the image of God. And that's all I need to know in order to love you, because it's that and that only that gives you value. You don't need to earn value. It's been assigned to you because you were made in God's image. And know what? And this is what I say, know what, students? Usually it's students. Know what, students? Even if you wanted to throw that value off, you can't. It's stuck on you because it's part of who you are fundamentally. That's the true story of reality. And that's why I'm here. And then I'll start my presentation. But I start with love. I see you, I hear you, and I love you. And I don't need to agree with you to love you. And that's what they need to hear. But then they need to hear the truth. They need to hear the truth about who they are fundamentally. And part of that is God has made us sexual beings. God has made us male and female, right? And then we share hard truths. So, anyways, um, our feelings don't bend reality. Reality ought to bend our feelings, and this is part of the whole. One of the biggest issues I have with this whole conversation, and this has been for years now. Thanks for that comment, Rick. One of my issues for years now has been, why is it that we are so willing and quick to alter the body but not the mind? Right. This is something that I've spoken about here on To the Point a few months back. Right. Love Thy Body by Nancy Pearcey has highly influenced me on this. A great book. Read the book. Nancy Pearcey, Love Thy Body. Why are we so quick to alter our body? So we'll mutilate our body, but not our minds. Like, why is that? That is a low view of the body. That's a low view of humanity. That's a low ethic. That's not good. Our minds, we should be renewing our minds, right? So if somebody is a boy and they feel like a girl, we should be addressing the mind, the feeling. And I'm not saying people don't legitimately feel this way. They do. They struggle, and that's part of it. But it doesn't mean we don't tell them the truth, because reality doesn't bend according to our preferences. David, you said thank you. Thank you, David Rowe. Let's see here. Right here. Even if it was research, it means nothing. Yeah, in today's day and age, man, research ain't research. And science ain't science, by the way. Because all of these things are being pressured and influenced by a worldview and ideologies that flow out of these worldviews. Ideas have consequences. And then John Stonestreet says that bad ideas have bad consequences. Or no, bad ideas have victims, is what John Stonestreet says. Ideas have consequences, bad ideas have victims. And here we see the victims of bad ideas. And it's only going to get worse unless we speak about it and talk about it and bring it. Parents need to take control. Yes, the gospel of rant jams. Rant jams. I'll have to check this out when I'm done here. That might be something I'm interested in. Anyways, parents need to take control. Take responsibility for our kids. Take responsibility for their education. We're charged with raising our children up in the fear and admonition of the Lord. That's our responsibility. That's ours. And dads, time to step up. Step up your game. Get involved. Be asking your kids, even if right now, I understand that there's some of you guys who are watching and you can't right now jump ship and take your kids out of public school tomorrow. I understand that. But what you can do is you can go home today and you can say, hey, what did you learn today? What's going on in class? How's school? Like, can I see what you're working on? It doesn't mean you can't call the administrator down to your kid's school and say, hey, you know what? I got some time off them schedule and I'd love to just come in and kind of sit in on one of my kids' classes. Is that cool with you? If they say no, why not? Why not? As a parent, why am I not allowed in to see what you're teaching my kids? That's a little concerning. Do you think it's okay to do that? Like, what I mean? Just ask the questions, push the envelope. And this falls on our shoulders, men. Step up. Yeah. Here, gospel, the same. Thanks for watching. Thanks for these comments, man. They're so good. Don't let someone else raise your kids. I mean, I guess you could have probably boiled the last hour down just to that. Don't let somebody else raise your kids. That's totally true. That's our responsibility. It's our privilege to do it. So that's right. Oh, did I say something funny? My first name's Jon. You can just call me Mr. Noises. Oh yeah, I am getting old. So yeah, but yeah, I do have an accent. I'm from Boston originally, outside Boston. I grew up in Plymouth, Massachusetts, home of the Pilgrims, America's hometown. Yeah, my accent comes out. I don't know what I said, but I said something. Let's see here. Louis, I took your suggestion from last week and I read Live Not by Lies. Very moving, very interesting. And predictive? Maybe we could say yes, Louis, absolutely. It is predictive. It is moving. It's disturbing, not in a shock value type sense or anything like that. It's just you read and you find yourself, oh yeah, this is where we're going. Oh yeah, this does look like this. And one of the things I like about Dreyer is that he kind of, I mean, he's definitely conservative, politically speaking, but he kind of walks a little bit more of a line. He's harsh on Republicans and Democrats. He mentions George Bush. He mentions Barack Obama. He mentions Donald Trump. He mentions these people kind of equally. So he kind of calls everybody to the mat, which I like, because in the end, guys, our allegiance is to Christ. It's not to a political party. And if you're not living in tension with either or any of the political parties, if there isn't a tension there, I'd say you should reevaluate what your allegiance is to, because there should be some issues that the left holds that are that strike you as right, as good, and then there's some issues that the right hold, that when we look at them, they hold positions on certain things. When we look at them, we should have issue with them. So we should be somewhere. I'm not saying in the middle necessarily, for sure not the middle, but there should be a tension, because our allegiance is to Christ, not to a donkey or an elephant. And anyways, it's enough of that before I get myself in trouble. Yes, great book. Let's see here. Has STR thought of helping train parents in public schools? I think all of our stuff, to be honest with you, this is a good question, Justice. Thanks for it. All of our material can be used to help train. That's our goal, is to help train Christians, period. So like all of this stuff, one of the things that we're doing right now is we're starting these outposts. We've got like 60 of them already all over the country, all over the world now. Actually, I think we have 2 internationals. There are these outpost groups, and you can email, I think it's info@str.org, and you can get more information about Robbie Lashua. He's our newest speaker brought on. He's in charge of these outposts, and it's keeping him incredibly busy. You can start an outpost in your neighborhood out of your home. This is a way that we're actually, you asked Justice about the church. This is one way that we're partnering with the local church to get these types of training in. So what we do is we can send you, we send you a bunch of material. We've got coursework that you go through. And I think it's like there's video series and some books, one of them is Greg's Story of Reality. Is something that everybody should go through. Every Christian should go through. It's a fantastic book, especially because it describes the Christian worldview and what we believe in non-religious language. It's not in Christianese. And I love that Greg does this. And this is something that I'm trying to catch from him, that we describe our worldview in different means. So it's instead of you need to be saved, you need a rescue, stuff like that. You just say it a little bit differently. It causes people to go, oh, wait, it's like, okay, because they've heard saved before. They've heard these. So anyway, Story of Reality. But these outposts are fantastic resources for you guys to get involved with. And anybody can start one. I mean, there's an application process, an interview process, because we have to vet you, because we're putting our stamp of approval on you. But then you just start these groups in your neighborhood or at your church. And next thing you know, you're getting the training that we need. I'd say look at the blogs. I mean, Amy Hall is like kind of the curator of the blog, and we publish at least one a day, I think. I think we do one a day or something close to that, or a couple a week at least. And it'd be great. Just go in there and periodically. STR University, free resource. If you guys haven't done it, fantastic. Go to str.org/training. I'm sure Harmony will put a link in. She's always good about this. Sign up for STR University. We've got, gosh, I think more than a handful, at least 5, 6, 7 or 8 classes now, maybe more, that you can take these free courses, 5, 6 part courses on anything from, I've done Problem of Evil. I just recorded one. It'll be coming out soon on exclusivity of Christ. I've done one on biblical justice. Alan Schleman just did one on making abortion unthinkable. Greg has done one on tactics and atheism. Tim Barnett has done Why Apologetics and a bunch of other stuff. They're really great resources to get into, and they're free. So this is a great opportunity. Like, so, but I do hear what you're saying. Help parents train in the public school. I think that's a great idea, Justice, of kind of maybe focusing something on towards here. How do we navigate the public school system? How do we do this? My answer: get your kid out. I hate to say it. I don't hate to say it. I know it's hard, and it doesn't fall well on people's ears, because it's not possible for everybody. I truly believe that. But I think if we were motivated enough, we would. So anyways, good question here. David, government funds it. Why? Deconstructionism, revisionism. Well, yeah. Well, there's ideological benefits, right? And it's also, we fund it, right? Like, we pay taxes, and then we're funding this stuff. So not only are we the victims, are not only our children the victim of it, but we pay for it. And that's why, I mean, when we pull our kids out, because then we're going to start defunding, defunding the public school system. And the only way to do that is to pull kids. I mean, we still pay taxes, but the way the system is now is that as enrollment drops, funding drops. So that's what we got to do, oh boy, I just skipped a bunch. I'm sorry, guys. Here's a question here. What do you think generates motivation for school boards to support and push this bizarre agenda? I just don't get it. Yeah, Isaac, this is a great question. It's worldview, right? There's a battle that's raging in the unseen realms. And this is the true story of reality, right? So oftentimes we shy away from talking about these things. But they're not these things. The battle that's raging they're not power encounters. Like, it's not a war like with bombs and missiles. They're truth encounters. There's a battle over truth, over reality. What is true? And there's worldviews behind these things. I think power and control oftentimes serve as motivators to pursue these types of worldviews, to force them, and so that's why these school boards and stuff. I think genuinely, I think a lot of the times the school boards that at least in my area, I think they cave to cultural pressure. I think that there's a very loud minority of people who wholesale buy into this stuff, and I think that they're very loud, and they make themselves seen and heard. And I think that they use fear and shaming as a tactic to motivate people to capitulate, to agree, and to surrender. And that's what we see, and then it gets more and more extreme as time goes on. We have witnessed that in the last 10 years, the last 15 years. I actually remember in my area, there was a radio host, Frank Pastore. He was one of the first Christians that I ever listened to on the radio. He had I think it was a 3-hour rush hour drive time talk show on KKLA in the Southern California area. He was phenomenal. He actually died on his way home from the radio show one day. He was riding his motorcycle. He got hit by a car and died tragically. And I remember as Obergefell was about to be argued, and I remember the same-sex marriage stuff. Like, it was actually before Obergefell. There was the same-sex marriage stuff that was starting to be talked about, and I remember Frank Pastore calling this and saying, "This is just the beginning, guys. Like, this is going to be a reality." And so much more. And he was very prophetic in that. Even Francis Schaefer has been calling this. If you guys live not by lies, How Then Shall We Live is a fantastic book. Anything by Schaefer, Francis Schaefer. I mean, he in the 70s and the 80s, he was very prophetic about this. But it's all worldview stuff. In Christians, what Schaefer says is we've been viewing things, we compartmentalize our views. We view things as separate issues, right? We've got the same-sex issue, we've got the abortion issue, we've got church, we've got family life, we've got education, and really they're all conglomerate. They're all part. They're joined in what's known as a worldview. They're worldview issues, and their worldviews is where the battle is. The battle is over over worldviews. So there's a different worldview. That's what I think is going on. You know. So yeah. Let's see here. What's Jancott 2999? I love it. What's holding Christian parents from sending their kids to private Christian or classical school? Is cost the main factor? How to help those schools with recruiting more students? Yeah. Well, in my area, my school, at the school where my kids go, they have a waiting list. They have a waiting list of like 100 people. There's 400 students K through 12, and so they can't even. I mean, we're maxed out next year at our school. There's no more room. We can't admit more students because we're out of room. So it's not helping recruit. I think it's not helping recruit. There's a lot to stay here. We need to be more selective in how we, I think, select students and make sure that people are actually sold out on the mission. But anyways, that's a different topic. I think affordability is a big issue. I think we've and this is worldview stuff, guys. We've bought into a lot of the cultural narrative on so much, right? It's a whole picture thing. So we could talk about this. Could be a whole topic, right? But now today, presently, more and more, for example, women work out of the home, right? So and then that's a lifestyle thing too. I'm an example of this, guys. I'm preaching to myself when I say this. But my wife works out of the home so we can afford our lifestyle, live in a beautiful house in Southern California, in a very desirable area, 8 miles from the beach, and that's something that we've chosen. And then those choices require sacrifices. Every choice has a consequence and then benefit, right? So you do that analysis and you say, okay, what do we want for our family? So we make decisions based on that. And part of that is how do we want to educate our children? For the longest time, my wife and I, we just honestly, like when we talk about it, we just weren't homeschool people. That's what we thought. Well, now we find ourselves homeschooling our oldest, and she was at a great school, but we took her out because we want more control. Not in a bad way. It's not bad to want control, by the way, over your 12-year-old daughters and sons. I want to be able to spend time with her, going over her schoolwork. My wife is a mathematician. She's super smart. My wife can teach at higher level math than any school around in our area is going to teach. So we want to be able to progress her at our own pace. I travel a lot for work. How cool is it that I get to bring my daughter with me? These are benefits of it. These are choices that we've made, but also there's negatives to it too, right? Our life is a heck of a lot more busy. I have to take a day off a week in order to homeschool instead of work, which means I'm working on Saturdays, so we make these decisions. So I think affordability is big, but also we make choices as far as lifestyle. Like how do we want to live, and what do we want? Some of us have 2-income homes because we need it. I'm a very fortunate person. I'm definitely a have, not a have not. And I know that some people here that are watching, you guys might be struggling, and my heart goes off you. Maybe this is the importance of the church here. Maybe the church. So my church, and I'm not ringing my own bell here, but I don't get paid a salary at my church. There's 4 of us pastors. One of us gets 2/3 of a salary, and then the rest of us get odds and ends. We get some certain things afforded for us, like books. I get paid when I preach, $150. But what we've done is we've decided that the people, not programs, but people, are going to be our focus. So when we have people that just literally this last weekend, we had a woman that came up to us, and a woman who's a member of our church. We caught wind that she was struggling, and she needed some money to get through for the month. So we're able to do that for her. We've paid bills for people. Maybe this comes in the way of saying, hey, you know what? We want to provide scholarships to a good Christian school. What can we do? Maybe we set aside some of our money for that. We can think creatively about this. This is one of the things that Dreyer actually does really, really well towards maybe the last quarter of the book. He talks about kind of some solutions, how we do it. But what we're trying to do at church is we're trying to, without really being overt, without being in your face with it, we're trying to set our people up. We have between 130 and 200 people come to our church every week. So it's small. By Southern California standards, that's small. Some of you are like, oh my gosh, it's so big. But we're trying to prepare our, excuse me, we're trying to prepare our people for what we think is coming, right? We think that oppression and real sacrifice is coming. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to equip our people to think Christianly through issues, but then also think Christianly about how do we live? How do we live? So when Michael, I'm making this name now, Michael, who works for Google, when he gets fired because he will not sign on that dotted line saying that that boys can be girls and girls can be boys. When he will not do that, he takes an ideological stand, and they give him the boot and they take away his retirement and everything. Well, we have Sam who owns a business and can hire him on and use some of the skills that his brother in Christ has learned and accumulated over a 20-year career at Google, and that they'll transfer over, and then they can take them in, and then we have a Christian community is what I'm saying. We build a Christian community, a distinctly Christian community, that where we can take care of each other. We've got people, it sounds crazy, but we've got people in our church in Southern California who are big in the homesteading. Right. And I think that that's going to be a big thing if something comes about where all of a sudden, like there's like, if I get fired from my job, or if the STR has to fold up or whatever, because of whatever comes down the pipeline, and we're going to need to eat, and it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but this is what we do. We take care of each other, and then the way that we can do this is through Christian schooling as well. If you homeschool currently right now, and maybe you've got one or two kids that you're homeschooling, you think maybe you can help out with one or two more, you could always offer to a friend, hey, have you ever thought about this? Like, maybe we could do something. I know you have to work, but like, one of the cool things about homeschooling too is it's not just a Monday through Friday thing. Sometimes we want to go away midweek. So what we'll do is we'll homeschool on Saturday and Sunday. And then you have some freedom there. So maybe you can work stuff out. The long answer to a very good question is a Christian community is very important. And if cost is the main factor, there's got to be ways to offset that. And part of doing this life together is just being honest with each other too. Throw it out there to your friends. Hey guys, this is my desire. This is my conviction. I have to get my kids out of public school. Can you maybe help me figure out how we can do this? Here are my finances. Have you guys heard of anything? Like, is there any way that we could do this, form a co-op or something like that? But I hope that answers the question. Man, you guys have so many questions today. This is so great. I've gone a long time. I'll go a little bit longer if that's okay with you guys. I'm having fun. Unless I might have another meeting. I do have another meeting. But I'll be late for that one. I'll answer a couple more. Okay. Why don't we as Christians stop acting like, why don't we as Christians stop it? Hey, is that Cavan Cornell Hicks? Cavan, CCH, Cavan, man. Good to meet you. Well, I guess we haven't met, but it's best we could do. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Why don't we as Christians stop acting like it's noble to be pushovers? Separation of church and state says that the government shall do nothing to prevent us from practicing a religion, talking freely about Jesus. I agree with you to a certain extent here, man. I got to say, I mean, not even to a, I feel like oftentimes we're doormats, right? And that's where it's gotten into that's where it's gotten us. I know. And my daughter is a perfect example of it. If you guys heard, I used her as an example. My 9-year-old daughter was fearful, legitimately fearful of bringing up an issue that she was watching on television because we were in an office where other people were there. And she was fearful. She was nervous or afraid of what other people would think of her if she asked a question to her father. This is not something that we've taught here. This is something that she's caught from the culture, right? This is something that she's taught from the culture, because all of these shows, everything, it's constant. I got to combat this stuff constantly. But we can't be doormats, and then we can't, like this. It's pushovers. I mean, this is not Jesus's model. Jesus was strong. He was harsh sometimes. He said things that cut. For sure. right? I mean, we all over scripture, but he did it out of proper motivation. That's what we got to make sure that we're doing. We got to make sure that we have the character, right? Integrity in what we do and how we do it. So knowledge, wisdom, and character are the three pillars of STR. So we want to have the knowledge, the know-how, and we want to have the wisdom, the guidance and how to do it. But then we also want to have the character, and that comes, and that's sometimes the hardest thing. We want to make sure that we do it, but we do it in a way that's winsome and attractive, and something that doesn't. Greg always says that the gospel is offensive enough, no need to add any offense to it, and I agree with that statement. Sometimes the things that we have to say are offensive. We just want to make sure we're not adding offense to it, but doesn't mean we don't share the offensive thing. So, good question, Kevin. Thanks for tuning in, man. I really appreciate it. Letters to an American Church. I'm assuming this is from a chat. Tim, that's Chan's book. Chan's book right there is solid, actually. I'm a fan of Chan. So, anyways, yeah, Letters to American Church. It's probably something that you guys were talking about in the past. Let's see here. Your pastor promotes a Christian school that's associated with it, but says nothing about public school kids. Yeah, Justice. So maybe this is kind of like what you were getting at. Yeah, I think that this would be a good thing to be speaking on from the pulpit, bringing it up, saying, "Hey, I just want to let you guys know." One of for the local churches that I used to go to here, way back, I was a brand new Christian, recently married, and we just didn't stick at this church. But the pastor, I really respected this. The pastor he started, like, if you wanted to come early, a half hour early, you could come a half hour early, and he would address a current event, which I really loved, because he would address a current event from a biblical worldview. And if you wanted to come early, you can hear it. And it's like, usually he would just cut out an article from the newspaper. So it'd be like this, like what we just did. He would cut out that article from the New York Times. He'd bring the New York Times, and he'd say, okay, hey, I read this. Here's the worldview implications. Here's how we respond as Christians. And so maybe pastors could start doing something like that, maybe from the pulpit, and addressing current relevant issues. So yeah, address the Christian school. But why should I send my kid? Why should I pay more to send my kid to a private school when I'm already paying for public school? That'd be a great question. Maybe next time they make the announcement, raise your hand. Who knows? Maybe he'll call on you and you can be like, hey, I just have a question. Why should I spend my hard-earned money to send my kid to this school when I'm already paying for a public school education? Is there something that I don't that maybe I need to be aware about? And maybe he'll have an answer. That'd be great. Okay, let's see here. Let's see here. I'm going to try to scroll through and see if I see any questions, because I do need to get going. Oh, man. There is so much interaction today, guys. Like, this has been great. I see lots of names here. Francis Chan, yeah. Eric Metaxas, Letters to American Church, yes. Let's see. Soul Safe Productions. We need to raise and build strong, reasonable, and articulate Christians so that we can be in schools and push back against the darkness and the lies. Yes. However, I would push back just a little bit and say that our children aren't missionaries. Our children are disciples, and I view missionaries. Jesus spent 3 years with his guys and sent them out, right? So we need to be, I think, raising disciples up and then sending them out when they're ready. I mentioned my friend that I had a conversation about with this. His kids are good. No matter what comes down the pike in a public school, his kids will be good. So you got to gauge this for yourself. But I do know that right now, with the cultural climate and the climate within the school system, if you start speaking your mind, it'll be miserable, or has at least the potential to be very miserable for you. So we just want to make sure that we are doing what's best for our children and not using them as something that they ought not be. But yeah, I agree with you, man. Certainly with the first part, we need to be raising and building strong, reasonable, and articulate Christians, not just so we can be in the public schools, but the schools, but so they can be productive members of society and out there in the culture at large. It sounds like you might do productions of some kind, soul safe productions. You're creating culture if you're in film or whatever it is that you produce, music. That's creating culture, and we need Christians to produce amazing culture, really good culture. Uh, and not just Christian culture either, by the way, like not just Christian music or Christian movies, just killer music and awesome movies. Anyways, that's a whole nother rant I could go on, but awesome. Maybe I'll so this is you again, man. I agree that we should have our children in Christian schools. However, isn't that part of the problem? Shouldn't we work to make our children brighter, stronger lights in the darkness in the public schools? I hear what you're saying, man. Yes. I hear what you're saying, but I think the cart is before the horse in this right here. I think that the Christian schools or whatever, however, isn't it part of the problem? I think the problem is us, the adults, the mature Christians, haven't spoken up. And I think our students, our kids are the victims of that when we put them. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, you know what? Clean up my mess. That's what it feels like that we're saying to our students. Clean up my mess. We let the ball drop on this. Clean up my mess. I've trained you up to be a Christian. Yeah, sure. You're like, again, it's an individualistic thing. It's fine. Like I'm not saying that you can't raise up a student who's going to be super strong for Christ and survive and do incredible things. I am saying that the statistics say that doesn't happen. The statistics, if you buy them or not, I don't know. That's up to you, But if you Pew or Barner or any of these research places, when Ligonier comes out with a state of the church every year, when you look at these things, it would seem like what we're doing is we're feeding our kids to the wolves. So maybe there's a lot more going on here, right? Maybe there's a lot more going. Maybe there's a lot of different issues. We're not training our kids up, and so therefore we're not when they send them out, they're just getting eaten up. So if we trade them up better, they could help influence. But at the same time, we need to be influencing and taking charge of taking responsibility of that. So I think maybe here it's a both and. So what do you think? I think it's a both and here. But I know for a fact that I would not put my kids in a public school here. And my kids are Christian warriors, dude. I mean, straight up. They love Jesus and they talk about Jesus, and then I'm raising the best I can. But my kids are 12, 10, 9, and 6. And you put them in an environment where they're the minority, and their influencers don't agree with them. Their authority, because when you give your kids over to the right now, when you take your kids and you put them into a classroom, what you're effectively saying is that you are the authority over my child in my place, right? You're the authority. What is it? Something. Oh, Lotus. Oh man, Lotus. It's not Lotus operandi, or there's a Greek term for it. But you put your stamp of approval on this, and so this authority here is supposed to be teaching you. They have authority, but when they ascribe to a radical ideology, how do you expect your 9-year-old? I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, Joel could do that, but in reality, it just doesn't. And then statistically speaking, it just doesn't seem to happen a ton. So with that, guys, I need to get to my next meeting. You guys have been awesome. The interaction has been insane. You guys added so many comments. I'm looking forward to going through some of them after I get off. But I appreciate you all. I appreciate you sticking in there an hour and 13 minutes today. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back with another one. I'd love to hear from you guys. Info@str.org. You could always offer up a suggestion to something that you really want to hear about here on To The Point. I'd love to address that for you. Also, make sure that if you haven't gone over to str.org, that you do that. All these resources, I mean, they're all of the stuff that we do over there is free. So feel free to poke around and get the stuff that you need. We've got a couple of reality conferences coming up. Starting next month, we're back on the road. We're going to be in Dallas, and then we're going to be in Philadelphia, and then we're going to be in Augusta, Georgia for our last one. Look at realityapologetics.com, and and sign up. if you're within striking distance, like there's all this, like you guys have asked some amazing questions about how do we help our kids navigate the culture. I'm not just saying this because I'm part of STR. I'm not. Like, I love my job. I have my dream job. STI is amazing. But even if I wasn't a part of this team, the conferences, the reality student apologetic conferences are where you need to get your student to. We got 6 of them all over the country. Plan accordingly. If it's within striking distance, you can fly or drive, make a vacation out of it. Two days, a Friday night and an all day Saturday, and your kids are going to get training how to combat the culture on this stuff, But make sure if you come to any of these realityapologetics.com, if you come to any of these events, make sure you say hi to me. I'd love to meet you face to face. That's like, this is cool, but meeting face to face is so much better. So we've got that coming on. We've got a couple new courses on STRU coming out, str.org/training. And we just launched, I think, the abortion one. There's one more that I think that we launched, but I forget. So with that, guys, it's been great being with you. Hope you guys are well and stay well. And I hope to meet you face to face someday. Have a good one. Bye-bye.